Discovering the hidden truth, how 11 years of blame transformed my life after my sister's accident. Jake Thompson stood behind the counter of Thompson Hardware, inhaling the familiar smell of wood shavings and the crispness of fall. Memories of laughter and joy clashed with the weight of guilt that hung like a dark cloud above him. 11 years weighed heavily on his shoulders. The moment of the accident, a blink that changed everything. He could still hear the crunch of metal on metal, the scream that followed, and the silence that engulfed him when he realized what he had done. There she was, his little sister Emily, once full of life, now confined to a wheelchair. How could he shake that blame? It clung to him as the scent of freshly cut lumber permeated the air, suffocating any spark of ambition. Community events in Maplewood felt like trials, each friendly gaze a judging eye, watching, waiting for him to falter. Autumn leaves crunched underfoot as residents gathered at the street fair. Jake forced a smile, pretending to engage with the laughter and music, while inside he was battling demons. "You're not good enough," they whispered. His father, Tom, built from war-torn grit, wore a frown that only deepened with every shared silence. Jake wanted to be a son worthy of his father's pride, but how could he? As he battled through the festivity, families reveled in joy around him. He could hear the chatter, the stories shared over cups of homemade cider. It felt like a celebration of everything he could never be. Just then, an old friend, Mark, approached with a slap on the back, oblivious to Jake's boiling insides. "We miss you at the bar. You should come back." Mark beamed, his laughter ringing hollow to Jake's ears. Why couldn't they see their cherished memories were a prison for him? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just then, an unexpected commotion unsettled the crowd. Jake turned to see a new voice claiming attention, old secrets spilling into the open like a cracked dam. "You don't know the truth," the figure shouted, escalating the tension thick in the fall air. Stunned faces turned toward Jake, eyes wide, whispers swirling like autumn leaves caught in a storm. Jake's heart raced, pounding against his chest. The realization hit him hard. It was not just about him anymore. Emily's pain and Tom's sorrow ebbed into his own, mirroring the emotions of everyone watching. Jake's heart raced, pounding against his chest. The realization hit him hard. It was not just about him anymore. Emily's pain and Tom's sorrow ebbed into his own, mirroring the emotions of everyone watching. He felt exposed, raw, and confused as the layers of blame and judgment began to peel away. Would he allow this unexpected moment to unravel the shackles of guilt binding him? Or would he once again hide behind the facade he had so carefully crafted? As he opened his mouth to respond, the weight of his family's gaze grounded him further, and everything hung in the balance. The choice lay before him. Should he step into the light or remain a prisoner of his past? The words hovered in the air, heavy and suffocating. Jake felt the whole world narrowing down to that moment, the electric anticipation buzzing like the tension before a thunderstorm. He glanced around at the faces, concerned, curious, some with pity. But more than that, they seemed to expect something from him, something he had strived to avoid for so long. "Enough!" Jake finally shouted, a burst of emotion breaking through the dam he had carefully built for years. Silence fell over the crowd, the laughter and chatter snuffed out like a candle extinguished by the wind. Even the leaves rustled softly, as if afraid to disturb this moment. His heart raced as he felt the weight of 100 eyes on him. "You think you know the whole story, don't you?" he continued, his voice rising. "You think you've seen my pain. You think this guilt is my burden alone." There was a murmur from the crowd, a ripple of confusion. Jake's pulse quickened with each breath he took. "But you don't," he pressed, his fear bubbling to the surface, transforming into a fierce resolve. "You don't know what really happened that day. You don't know how Emily suffered, and how my father—" Tom's face twisted in distress, but Jake couldn't stop. "And how he lost his daughter and his son to all of this. I'm not the only victim here. I've carried her scars, and it's crushing me." The shocked silence shattered into whispers, growing louder as Jake's words echoed through the streets. He felt exposed, raw. For years he had internalized the pain, pushed every emotion down until they roiled within him like a restless storm. Now he was ready to unleash the tempest. "I tried to protect her," Jake faltered, feeling the weight of the memory. "But I couldn't. I was supposed to keep her safe." He squeezed his eyes shut, fighting the surge of tears. "What good am I if I fail at the one thing that mattered?" The crowd shifted, the faces morphing from judgment to sympathy. He opened his eyes and almost stumbled back as he locked gazes with Emily's best friend, Sarah, who stood there with tears glistening in her eyes. For a fleeting moment, he saw her sweet smile and heard their shared laughter before the accident, a time when everything felt bright and hopeful. "Jake, it's okay," Sarah finally said, stepping forward, her voice steady but soft. "You didn't know what would happen. We all made mistakes." Her words were warm like sunlight, and yet they pierced deeper into his heart, a reminder of the 30-second fracture that changed so many lives. The murmurs grew softer, compassion breaking through the tension like dawn breaking upon a dark night. Jake's chest tightened, a chorus of emotions swelling. Longing, blame, sorrow, and even a flicker of hope. Maybe it's time to talk about it. He voiced the thought that had terrified him for years. Maybe it's time to let everyone in, to stop hiding. Suddenly, the unexpected figure from earlier stepped from the shadows, face resolute. "You don't have to bear the weight alone," they said, a newfound determination echoing in their voice. "We can tackle this together, all of us." Jake's heart raced again, feeling the first flicker of possibility. What if this was the moment that changed everything? Layers upon layers of suffering and guilt began to loosen, and although the path ahead seemed daunting, he didn't want to take it alone anymore. As the crowd shifted, anticipation crackled in the air. Could he really begin to share? The answer lay somewhere beyond the fear, waiting for him to find it. Would he take the step into the uncertain light, or retreat into the familiar shadows once again? Jake took a deep breath, wondering if this time he might just find the strength he needed. Jake felt the air thicken around him as he stood there, heart pounding. He looked at Sarah, then at the rest of the crowd, grappling with his emotions. A low murmur passed through the onlookers, and he could sense their curiosity pulling him forward, urging him to break the silence. "I want to talk," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. It surprised him how much he wanted to share his truth, despite the fear still lingering in the back of his mind. The shame, the blame, the guilt, they were all so heavy. But what if he let them go? "Gather round. We all need to hear this," Tom said, stepping closer with an encouraging nod. The crowd shifted, forming a small circle around Jake. He took a deep breath again, grateful for the presence of people he hadn't expected to stand by him. 11 years ago, he began, his voice growing steadier. "My sister Emily and I were the best of friends. We were inseparable, until that day." He paused, the weight of the memory pressing on him like a concrete block. "I was driving. I thought I was being responsible, keeping us both safe. But when I lost control, when she didn't make it." The words caught in his throat like shards of glass. A shared gasp rippled through the crowd. He could see the empathy in their eyes, people finally connecting the emotions he felt inside. "I spent years torturing myself with what ifs. What if I had taken a different road? What if I had been more careful? I refused to let anyone in. I shoved all that hurt down and told myself it was my fault, my burden to carry. Jake shook just thinking about it, the anguish still fresh. But it killed me inside. I thought I had to be alone in this. I thought that's how I atoned. He caught Sarah's gaze and saw her nodding, encouraging him to continue. Then I began to notice other faces, the ones of family, friends. They were hurting too, not just me. They lost Emily just like I did. A flicker of realization crossed his mind. Every one of us was holding on to our own guilt. It was like we were all carrying this invisible weight. Quiet tears streamed down Sarah's face as she listened. It was a reminder that grief, heartbreak, and anguish didn't only belong to him. Together, they were intertwined in a way he had never fully understood. In that moment, I realized guilt doesn't belong to just one person, he continued, his heart swelling. It belongs to everyone who loved her, and we're all allowed to change how we cope with it. With deeper breaths, he felt himself slipping from the shadows, stepping into a light only imagined before. So, let's speak her name. Let's remember her, together. The crowd seemed to draw closer, their support wrapping around Jake like a warm embrace. He looked at their faces, their expressions shifting from sorrow to hope. As the whispers transformed into murmurs of encouragement, he felt the weight on his heart begin to lift. Jake, someone from the back spoke up. It was a new voice, someone he barely recognized. Can we all share our memories of Emily? Can we talk about how her absence affects us? That was it. For the first time in more than a decade, a spark of hope ignited. They were ready to share, to support one another, to remember Emily, their beloved sister, daughter, friend. And perhaps in this journey of sharing, they would all find peace. A hush fell once again as Jake took a deep breath, shifting gears in his mind. This conversation was just beginning, but it felt like the opening of a door he thought was forever closed. Could he truly handle what was to come? As thoughts raced in his head, readying himself to hear the stories, he realized this sharing was also about him. Would this collective healing push him even further into the light, or uncover wounds he'd tried so hard to forget? Jake hesitated, his heart racing. He felt as if he were standing at the edge of a cliff, staring down at a turbulent sea. The memories of Emily washed over him, each one a wave crashing against the shore of his soul, and he could hear the whispers of the crowd, urging him forward. "Yeah, let's talk about Emily," he said, his voice stronger now. The murmurs swelled, a chorus of agreement. Each face before him held fragments of the past, pieces of a life that, despite deep loss, still. "Emily loved sunsets," a voice broke through the silence. It was Kelly, one of their childhood friends, her voice cracking like thin ice. "She would drag us all out to the beach just to see them." Kelly wiped a tear, her memories bursting forth. "Remember that one time she almost fell into the water trying to catch a crab? We all thought she'd drown, but she just laughed." A chuckle escaped the crowd. The warmth of shared laughter illuminated their sorrow, and Jake felt the heaviness lift from his shoulders. Emily had a way of bringing joy, even in chaos, and the stories began to flow, one after another. "I remember her singing off-key in the car," another voice chimed in. This time it was Mark, a distant cousin, his eyes glassy but hopeful. "She didn't care who laughed, she just wanted to sing. I'd give anything to hear her awful singing again." Gradually, the circle shrank, drawing everyone closer. Each shared memory became a thread woven into the tapestry of Emily's life. Tears mingled with laughter, and with every story, Jake felt the self-imposed shackles of isolation slowly begin to break. He glanced over at Sarah, whose face was lit up with emotion. In that moment, their eyes met, and he saw a flicker of understanding pass between them. It wasn't just about Emily any longer. It was about healing, together. Then Jake felt a nudge of hesitation. What about his story? What about the pain he carried? But as he opened his mouth, ready to speak, the voice of a stranger cut through, surprisingly gentle. "I lost my brother 2 years ago," the woman said softly, her eyes downcast, "and I've been stuck in this dark place. Your words made me realize I don't have to bear it alone." Jake's heart swelled, her vulnerability mirrored his own. The circle of sharing became poignant and beautiful, a reminder that while loss isolates, it also connects. He wanted to reach out, to say something meaningful, but words eluded him. With every shared memory, they seemed to step closer to a profound realization. It was as if each story peeled back layers of grief, revealing the raw essence of love that remained. Together, they carved a path towards healing, proving that even in absence, Emily's spirit lived on in each heart. As Jake took a deep breath, he prepared to share his own story about guilt, the weight that had kept him from moving forward. But just before he could speak, the crowd shifted again. A booming voice broke the moment. "I never knew Emily that well, but I felt her absence in our community. How do we move on? What can we do to honor her memory?" The energy shifted. Hope met uncertainty. Jake felt the weight of that new question settle over him. Would sharing more help them all move on? Or would it reignite the complications they had fought so hard to navigate around? As they stood amidst the swirl of emotions, Jake felt the boundaries of his heart expand. One thing was clear. The journey had only just begun, and he was terrified yet excited to see where it led. Would he find a way to honor Emily and himself in this new gathering of voices, or would his past threaten to pull him back into the shadows? Jake's heart raced as he felt the weight of the question pressed against him. How could he honor Emily and confront his own guilt? He glanced at the faces around him, filled with hope, grief, and a fragile determination. A lump formed in his throat, and he sensed that they were all waiting for him to lead them to the next step. As he looked into Sarah's eyes, he saw not just pain, but strength. She nodded slightly, encouraging him. The memories of Emily, vibrant and alive, fluttered through his mind. Her laugh, her kindness. He took a breath, steadying himself against the tide of emotion. "Okay, I'll try," he said, the words tumbling from his mouth. "I have this guilt. It's been like a shadow that doesn't leave me." The murmurs faded, replaced by a heavy silence. You all remember that day. A wave of memories crashed over him. The day Emily had insisted on driving them to the picnic at the lake, her laughter ringing like a bell as they sped down the winding roads. But that thrill turned into panic when the truck swerved off the road. Jake could still hear the crunch of metal and the haunting silence that followed. "I was supposed to be in that car with her," he continued, feeling his voice tremble. "I chose to stay behind at the last minute." Tears gathered in the corners of his eyes, and Jake felt his heartache laid bare. "I thought if I had gone, maybe she would have been okay. I thought I could have saved her." The air felt electric with empathy as he spoke. Eyes glistened with shared sorrow. Kelly reached out to squeeze his hand, a lifeline amidst the storm. "Jake, you can't carry that weight alone. She wouldn't want you to." Her words wrapped around him like a comforting embrace. The truth was stark. He had trapped himself under the burden of guilt for all these years, believing he was solely responsible for Emily's fate. But each face around him shared the same loss, the same longing to undo the past. "And what about honoring her?" Jake added, urgency rising in his voice. "How do we turn our pain into something beautiful for her, rather than letting it control us?" A soft voice emerged from the back of the group. "What about planting a garden?" It was the stranger from earlier. Her gentle suggestion hung in the air, and Jake caught the flicker of interest on everyone's faces. Emily loved nature. We could create a place for people to remember her, a sanctuary for those grieving. Everyone nodded, and a spark ignited amongst them. Ideas flowed. Maybe they could come together to hold a community event in her name, bringing laughter and love back into their lives, celebrating who she was instead of mourning what they lost. As Jake stood amidst the discussion, something began to shift within him. The anger turned into acceptance, the shadows receded a little more. But deep within, remnants of doubt lingered. What if it wasn't enough? What if this new path brought more heartache? Just then, a soft breeze rustled the leaves overhead, and he felt a flicker of warmth. It was as if Emily herself were watching, encouraging him to take this step forward. Would they find the courage to bring Emily's spirit back into their lives, or would the fear of the past hold them back? As this new chapter unfolded, Jake realized one undeniable truth. Healing wasn't just a solitary journey, it was a collective one. And together, they might just find a way to honor Emily that could start a fresh narrative for them all. Jake felt a surge of energy as the group buzzed with ideas. Yet underneath the excitement lay his lingering doubts. What if their efforts to honor Emily fell short? The weight of her absence pressed on him like an anchor. He had spent too long living in her shadows, and now, stepping into the light felt terrifying. "Okay," he said, regaining his focus. "Let's start with the garden. But how do we make it more than just flowers and soil?" He could see the wheels turning in Sarah's mind. Maybe we could ask the community for help. We can hold a fundraiser, gather supplies, and invite everyone to pitch in. It could be a day where we all come together, just like Emily would have wanted. Her enthusiasm spread through the group like wildfire. Cheers of agreement followed her words, igniting a new sense of purpose among them. Hope fluttered in Jake's chest. He was reminded of Emily's zest for life, her tendency to bring people together with nothing more than a smile and a warm hug. As the day wore on, they brainstormed ideas for the garden: flowers that bloomed bright in the summer, benches for seating, a small fountain to create a serene atmosphere. Each suggestion was laced with memories of Emily's laughter, echoing through the trees at the lake where she had always seemed so at home. "We can hold a grand opening," Kelly proposed. "Invite everyone. Make it a celebration of her life. It won't just be a garden. It'll be a reminder of the joy and love she brought into the world." Jake glanced around, seeing everyone nodding in agreement. This was more than just a project. It was a lifeline, a chance to reclaim the happiness they had lost. But as they made plans, another wave of guilt washed over him. "What if people don't come?" he voiced, the worry escaping his lips before he could stop it. "What if we forget her? All over again?" "Jake," Sarah said gently, placing a hand on his shoulder, "it's not about the numbers. It's about the meaning behind it. It's a step forward, not just for us, but for everyone who loved her." Her words struck a chord deep within him. He realized he had been allowing fear to dictate his actions, chaining him to the past. Perhaps healing was less about forgetting and more about creating something new from the pain. Suddenly, the group erupted into laughter over a shared memory of Emily slipping on a patch of mud at a picnic. Their laughter filled the air, dispelling the heaviness that had settled around them. Jake found himself laughing too, the sound bright and full, mingling with the warm breeze. But just as quickly, the laughter faded, overshadowed by a creeping thought. Was this truly the path to healing, or was it merely a distraction from the unresolved feelings swirling within his heart? As they wrapped up their planning session, excitement lingered in the air. But Jake couldn't shake the feeling that just beyond their joyful discussions lay more profound truths waiting to be uncovered. Even as they stepped into this new chapter of honoring Emily, part of him questioned if there were deeper layers of grief still hidden beneath the surface. With every laugh shared and every plan made, Jake felt the tug of something more profound blooming inside him. What were the truths hidden in his grief that had yet to be unearthed? And as a warm sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, he couldn't help but wonder, what would happen when he finally confronted the secrets he had kept buried for so long? The following days rolled on, each one a mix of planning, laughter, and an undercurrent of tension. The reality of Emily's absence seemed to linger like a shadow, especially during the moments of joy. Jake felt it cheekily reminding him that while they moved forward, a part of him remained tethered to what was lost. As the group began organizing the fundraiser, excitement buzzed through the air. Posters were made, local businesses were approached for donations, and word spread like wildfire. Yet amidst this vibrant whirlwind, Jake found himself retreating inward. He watched Sarah and Kelly rally everyone with a passion that was infectious, but in the secluded corners of his mind, dark clouds whispered of uncertainty. "Hey, you in there?" Sarah's voice broke through his thoughts as she waved a hand in front of his face one afternoon during a meeting. The bright light of the afternoon sun danced in her hair, making her look almost ethereal. "Yeah, sorry, just thinking." She tilted her head, concern shadowing her features. "You're doing that thing again. You know, it's okay to talk about how you feel. We're all here for you." For a moment, Jake considered sharing the burden that weighed on him, his fear of failing, of letting Emily's memory fade. But trembling on the edge of vulnerability felt like standing on a cliff. "I just want this to be right, for her." Sarah nodded, her gaze softening. "It will be. You just need to let us in. Don't carry this alone, Jake." With a heavy heart, he forced a smile. "I know, I'm trying." The night of the fundraiser arrived. The garden transformed into a canvas of colorful lights and smiling faces. Laughter bubbled around him as former classmates and residents of the town filtered in. Stalls lined the pathways, each decorated with photos of Emily, her contagious grin taking center stage. The fountain glistened, reflecting the flickering bulbs above, and the air was thick with the scent of fresh blooms and grilled food. Yet, despite the joyous surroundings, Jake felt his stomach twist in knots. As the event kicked off, he realized he had lost sight of his original purpose. Countless faces buzzed around him, each bearing a memory of Emily, and yet he felt so small. Every smile reminded him of the warmth he missed, but also of the guilt that weighed heavily on his heart. He stepped away from the crowd, seeking solace beneath an old oak tree that had stood as a sentinel in the park for years. The leaves rustled softly in the night breeze, reminding him of countless conversations shared with Emily, her laughter carried off into the wind. He took a deep breath, letting the silence wash over him. Then, as if the universe conspired to guide him, a figure approached. It was Caleb, a childhood friend he hadn't seen in years. "Jake, man, it's so great to see you," Caleb said, his enthusiasm warm and inviting. "Remember when we built that treehouse? Emily was on board asking for a slide." Jake chuckled, the memory flooding back. "We never did finish it, did we?" "Nope, but she always said we should turn it into a flower garden." Caleb's eyes sparkled. She loved flowers. Silence enveloped them, and suddenly the dark clouds in Jake's mind started to part. Here was a piece of Emily he had forgotten, a connection that tied them all to her. "Do you think," Jake started, unsure where his thoughts would lead, "do you think she knew how much we loved her?" Caleb nodded, a seriousness touching his tone. "Absolutely. You're not alone in missing her. We carry her with us in everything we do." As they shared that moment under the stars, a flicker of understanding ignited in Jake's heart. Could it be that honoring Emily didn't mean he had to be perfect or carry his grief alone? Perhaps it meant embracing the imperfections and the love and allowing himself to be free from the weight that had bound him for so long. But just as he began to grasp that flicker of light, the night's festivities brought a different kind of hush. A sudden shout pierced the air, pulling Jake's focus back to the crowd. What was happening? He could feel adrenaline surge through him, his veins. The laughter turned to whispers, and his heart raced as concern spread like wildfire. What truth lay ahead? What awaited him in the darkness of the unknown? Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he turned toward the commotion. He pushed past the bystanders, their faces now drawn with concern. What had happened? The laughter that filled the air moments ago had dissolved into a murmur of anxious voices. "Over there!" shouted someone, pointing toward the far end of the garden where the food stalls were set up. Jake's breath caught as he saw a familiar figure crumpled on the ground. It was Sarah. "Sarah!" Jake yelled, rushing toward her, fear clawing at his insides. He knelt beside her, and the world around him seemed to narrow down to that single moment. Her face was pale, and beads of sweat glistened on her forehead. "What happened?" he asked, panic tightening his voice. "I think she fainted. Someone call an ambulance," came Caleb's voice from behind. Jake pressed his fingers to Sarah's wrist, seeking the beat of her pulse, momentarily relieved to feel it thumping beneath his fingertips. "Stay with us, okay? Just breathe. You're going to be fine." "Jake," she murmured weakly, her eyes fluttered, struggling to focus. "I didn't mean to worry everyone." He could see the effort it took just to speak. "It's not your fault. You need rest. Just don't try to move." Caleb was on the phone now, his voice low and urgent as he requested help. The crowd had swelled, each face a mask of concern, fingers pointing and murmuring as they whispered among themselves. "Over there," shouted someone, pointing toward the far end of the garden where the food stalls were set up. Jake's breath caught as he saw a familiar figure crumpled on the ground. It was Sarah. "Sarah!" Jake yelled, rushing toward her, fear clawing at his insides. He knelt beside her, and the world around him seemed to narrow down to that single moment. Her face was pale, and beads of sweat glistened on her forehead. "What happened?" he asked, panic tightening his voice. "I think she fainted. Someone call an ambulance," came Caleb's voice from behind. Jake pressed his fingers to Sarah's wrist, seeking the beat of her pulse, momentarily relieved to feel it thumping beneath his fingertips. "Stay with us, okay? Just breathe. You're going to be fine." "Jake," she murmured weakly, her eyes fluttered, struggling to focus. "I didn't mean to worry everyone." He could see the effort it took just to speak. "It's not your fault. You need rest. Just don't try to move." Caleb was on the phone now, his voice low and urgent as he requested help. The crowd had swelled, each face a mask of concern, fingers pointing and murmuring as they whispered among themselves. As the sirens wailed in the distance, Jake felt a bitter surge of emotions. Here he was, amid a fundraiser meant to celebrate Emily's life, and yet he was now faced with a life-threatening situation involving Sarah. It felt so wrong, so out of place. When the paramedics arrived, they moved swiftly, their professionalism cutting through the tension like a knife. Sarah was taken care of, and Jake watched, helpless, as she was lifted onto a stretcher. His heart ached, not just for her, but for all the memories shared, the laughter and the joy that suddenly felt so distant. "Jake, it's going to be okay. She's in good hands," Caleb reassured him, as they followed the ambulance out of the garden, the crowd of onlookers beginning to dissipate. But even as they drove away, a gnawing worry took root in Jake's mind. What if it wasn't okay? What if something serious was wrong? He was supposed to be honoring Emily tonight, not worrying about losing another person so close to him. Arriving at the hospital, Jake's heart felt heavy. The sterile smell of disinfectant hit him as they entered, a stark contrast to the vibrant energy of the fundraiser. He paced the waiting room, each minute dragging on, feeling time stretch out painfully before him. "Jake," Caleb said gently, breaking through his whirlwind thoughts, "you need to focus on the good. Remember what we're doing this for. It's to celebrate Emily's life. Sarah would want us to keep that in mind." Jake took a deep breath, his gaze flickering toward the waiting room door. "I know, but this isn't how it was meant to go. I wish I could do something." "Right now, you're doing all you can," Caleb said firmly. "We're here for Sarah. We're here together." As they sat, silence hung heavy between them. Every minute felt like an eternity. Just then, the nurse walked in, her expression unreadable. "Are you family?" she asked, her tone professional yet kind. "No, but I'm a close friend," Jake replied, his throat tight. "She's stable, but we need to discuss some things about her condition." Jake's heart dropped. Condition? Caleb exchanged worried glances with Jake, the air thick with unspoken fears. What was about to be revealed? Would this night shatter more than just their hopes for the fundraiser? As the nurse motioned for them to follow her, Jake's mind raced with questions. What truth awaited them in this cold, sterile place? An unknown path stretched before him, filled with uncertainty and fear. Was he truly ready to confront another layer of loss in his life? Jake's legs felt heavy as he followed the nurse down a stark white hallway, each step echoing against the polished floor. Sarah was in there, fighting whatever had brought her to this point, and all he could do was wait and hope. The fluorescent lights above buzzed gently, a nagging reminder of how out of control everything felt. "Just breathe," Caleb whispered beside him, his voice steady, though Jake could feel the tension radiating off him. They stepped into a small room, devoid of warmth, where medical equipment hovered ominously around a bed. It felt surreal, like stepping onto a movie set, but there was no script here. As they settled into the stiff chairs, a doctor entered. Her demeanor was calm, which made Jake's heart race even faster. The crisp white coat contrasted sharply with the anxiety pervading the air. "Good evening. I'm Dr. Miller," she began, her eyes scanning their faces. "I'm here to talk about Sarah's condition." Jake leaned forward, his pulse quickening. "Is she going to be okay?" Dr. Miller hesitated, her gaze darting toward the clipboard in her hands. "Sarah has a history of dehydration and fainting spells. She was hyperventilating, which contributed to her collapse." Jake nodded. Relief washed over him momentarily, but the doctor continued, and his heart dropped again. "However, we need to conduct further tests to rule out any underlying conditions. We're also concerned about her heart rate being unusually low during the episode." "Underlying conditions?" Jake echoed, a lump forming in his throat. "Like what?" Caleb placed a hand on Jake's shoulder, grounding him, as the doctor spoke. "We're looking primarily at possible arrhythmias. There's a chance this could just be a one-time incident, but we want to be thorough." Jake's chest felt tight. He could remember times when Sarah was so full of life, her laughter infectious, but there was this other side, the side she rarely chose to share. The darkness of their past loomed over him, and he could feel the weight of it without her needing to voice it. "Can we see her?" Caleb asked, his voice breaking the silence. "Certainly. I'll have someone take you to her room," Dr. Miller said, her eyes still kind but now careful, as though she knew the weight of their situation. As they stepped out of the small room, Jake's mind churned. How did they get back to that place of joy, of celebration? He felt the burden of Emily's memory closing in around him, adding to the heaviness in his heart. What if this was just another episode of helplessness? They were guided to Sarah's room. The beeping of the machines was rhythmic yet unsettling. There she was, pale and fragile, surrounded by the starkness of the hospital. She looked smaller than he remembered, her face tired. "Hey," Jake said, softly, approaching the bed. "You scared us." Sarah's eyes fluttered open, and a ghost of a smile tempted the corners of her lips. "What happened? Did I ruin the night?" "Not at all. Remember that fundraiser we were going to?" Caleb jumped in. "Everyone's focused on you now. You're the star of the show." She chuckled lightly, a sound that felt healing. "I hate being the center of attention, but I guess I'm stuck with it." Jake sat down, squeezing her hand gently. "You're strong, Sarah. Whatever this is, we'll get through it together." But before she could respond, a shadow crossed her face. "Jake, there's something I need to tell you." The air thickened again, memories cascading like a heavy fog. What could it be? What truth lay beneath her words? Jake's heart raced, an unsettling mix of anticipation and fear flooding his senses. If only they could bend time back to that joyous night, without the worry, just for a moment, to reclaim the laughter and life. But the truth was waiting, poised to break at the seams. Would it bring them closer together, or draw them apart forever? What had she been holding back? Jake braced himself, knowing pivotal moments often came wrapped in vulnerability. Sarah's face softened, a hesitance lingering in her gaze, as she took a deep breath. "Jake, there's something from that night," she murmured, her voice trembling. "The accident, it wasn't just your fault." His heart raced, every breath feeling heavier. What do you mean? He had spent years grappling with guilt, convinced he was the architect of Emery's tragedy. That shadow had haunted him, And now, the flicker of a different truth began to flicker in the corners of his mind. Emily was supposed to wear her seatbelt, Sarah continued, her tone firm yet gentle. You can't carry this alone. She chose not to buckle up that day because she wanted her hair to blow in the wind. You couldn't have known, Jake. The weight of her words sank into him like lead, but in their depths, something else stirred, a glimmer of release. Could it be true? All this time, was there more to the story than he dared to believe? Sarah, just listen, she interrupted, her expression earnest. I've been carrying my own guilt, too. I was with you both that day and should have insisted she buckle up. We all made choices that led to that moment, and it's not only on you. Tears pricked at Jake's eyes. Each heartbeat echoed with the realization they had shared a burden too heavy to bear alone. But how do we move on from this? He whispered, his voice catching. You start by letting go, Sarah replied softly. We owe it to Emily to remember the good, to celebrate her life, and not just the way it ended. Jake felt a wave wash over him. Was this the truth he needed to hear? The catalyst to finally free himself from the shackles of guilt? In the moments that followed, they shared their memories. Laughter mixed with sorrow, a bittersweet harmony. Remember when she made us that awful dinner? Jake chuckled, wiping a tear from his cheek. She insisted it was gourmet. We almost choked it down. Or how she'd drag us to that hideous karaoke night just to make us sing? Sarah giggled, her eyes lighting up at the memories. With each story, a thread of healing began to weave between them. The unyielding weight of guilt felt lighter with every laugh, and the shadows that lurked in Jake's mind transformed into a tapestry of moments that had been built upon love and joy. As they reminisced, the door opened quietly. Caleb peeked in, his face brightening at the sight of Sarah awake. Hey, I heard the laughter, and I knew you two were cooking up some trouble. Not as much as you, Sarah shot back, a grin breaking through her exhaustion. Caleb stepped inside, momentarily weaving into their embrace of warmth and light. What have you been up to? With a playful nudge, Sarah replied, just unraveling the tangled webs of guilt. Want to join? In that moment, Jake realized there was a profound beauty in releasing the burdens that had long served as chains. It wasn't just their shared memories of Emily. No, they were forging paths to understanding, connection, and forgiveness. The air simmered with the truth. The collective weight of loss felt shared, and with it, the tendrils of love grew stronger. As the night wore on, laughter echoed in the small hospital room, and the stories flowed like a river, cleansing and renewing. Jake, Sarah started, her expression serious yet steadfast, there's something else we need to do. We have to honor Emily in a way that transcends just this garden, this event. We should take it further. Jake leaned forward, intrigued. What do you mean? I propose we create a scholarship in Emily's name, she said, determination shining in her eyes. Something that embodies everything she represented. Kindness, joy, adventure, helping students who need it most. Caleb nodded enthusiastically, his smile infectious. Yes, we can organize fundraisers every year, encourage kids to pursue their passions, just like Emily encouraged us. Jake felt it, the swell of hope and rebirth. In that small room, filled with the hum of machines and the comfort of sharing, he finally wrapped his mind around the idea. Let's do it, he said, a warmth blossoming in his chest. Let's make sure others feel the love she gave. Together. Together. The words settled between them like a promise. As they planned for Emily's legacy, the night drifted onward. Jake found solace not only in their emotional revelations, but in the flicker of community igniting all around him. The weight that had once held him captive began to dissolve, yielding to a sense of purpose driven by shared love and remembrance. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah's recovery brought hope and healing to their hearts. The fundraiser blossomed into something extraordinary, and with every step they took together, the memory of Emily transformed into something vibrant, a garden that would bloom eternally. Jake knew there would still be moments of sadness, remembrances of loss that would creep in uninvited. But with his friends by his side, he finally felt equipped to embrace it all: the joy, the sorrow, the laughter, and the love. As they stood before a crowd at the opening of Emily's scholarship fund, he sensed the warmth of hundreds of hearts joining in the celebration. This wasn't a closure. No, it was a new journey. A journey of light, woven through the shared memories of loss that gave way to the blossoming of love that would guide them home. And in that moment, he knew he had finally found his way out of the shadows. Now it's your turn. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even 1 more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.